Ladies and gentlemen, did you know that Twitter has junk bonds, that its debt is rated below investment grade? Did you know this? Well, I just want to read you this. Financial Times, high-yield bonds. Twitter plans first foray into junk bond market. Social media platform hopes to raise $600 million after underwhelming third quarter earnings, December 4th, 2019. Now, this is an article from 2019, and of course it's followed up by pretty weak earnings in the first and second quarter of 2020. But here, Twitter is planning its first foray into the junk bond market, hoping to raise $600 million as the social media platform tries to shrug off lackluster third quarter earnings. The company had held calls with investors on Tuesday, according to... The bond sale comes shortly after Twitter reported revenue growth of 9% year-on-year for the third quarter, the slowest rate of growth in 18 months, and falling short of Wall Street's expectations. After adjusting for a large tax benefit in the same quarter a year ago, the company's net income plunged more than 60%. This was in 2019. 2020 wasn't any better. Hit subscribe to this channel right this second. I'm going to do something that nobody on the internet is doing, nobody on YouTube. I'm going to read public record articles. This is the Financial Times, by the way, an article by Joe Renninson and Hannah Murphy. So this is the Financial Times. I'm not making this up. Hit subscribe to this channel. We're on our way to 200,000 subscribers. President Trump, I can't say single-handedly, but he's one of the reasons they've turned to junk bonds to raise money. Despite this backdrop, investors expect Twitter's debut bond sale to be met with strong demand. In contrast to other Silicon Valley technology titans such as Netflix and Tesla, which entered the bond market when they were torching cash, Twitter cash flow. From a debt holder's perspective, it's okay. Again, the rating agencies Moody's and S&P Global referred to Twitter's strong cash position in rating the company's debt as BB or BB+, respectively. Both fall just below the highest tiers of rating, so-called investment grade territory. It's so-called investment. I mean, really, honestly, it's just so-called investment grade, which is normally granted to companies with long histories of borrowing. BB rated debt has rocketed to 14% return. So, this is a great article, fantastic article. Financial Times, Twitter plans first foray into junk bond market. Now, again, it's not only Trump's fault, or thank God. You can't just say that President Trump, tanked this company to now where they're now junk bond status. But you have something called Introducing Birdwatch, a community-based approach to misinformation. So, not only were they having problems prior to banning President Trump, but they've become like this one-trick pony the past couple of years. Get this segment viral, hit subscribe to this channel. We're on our way to 200,000 subscribers. You could read my writing in The Hill, The Huffington Post, Salon, The Jerusalem Post, The Federalist, The Daily Caller. You could see my debates on hagoodman.com. If you want to support my voice long term, my Patreon is below in the pinned comment description and on hagoodman.com. Ladies and gentlemen, how many people are talking about Twitter actually, issuing junk bonds? So the interesting thing is that not only here, this is Market Watch. Investors like Twitter's junk bond deal so much it increased to $700 million, setting record for a first-time issuer. See, people are going to gobble up and invest in the junk bonds because they think Twitter is a long-term, a company that'll be around for the long term. In my humble opinion, and I could be absolutely wrong. I could be, oh my goodness, just so wrong. Okay? I don't think Twitter is going to be around in 5-6 years. I think it'll eventually go bankrupt because it is a cauldron, a boiling pot of discontent, venom, vitriol, disdain. I mean, if you're watching this channel, how many times have you been insulted or demeaned or denigrated by somebody on Twitter. And it doesn't have to be just politics. How many arguments have you gotten into on Twitter? How much negative emotions have you felt from that platform? Or how many, I should say, negative emotions have you felt? Has there been any positive interactions on Twitter? I mean, I guess I'm sure there has, of course. But when you compare the negative interactions to the positive interactions, is Twitter a force for good, or is it a cyber reality or cyber world that is now going to crowdsource whether or not information is accurate? So we'll get to that in a second. But here, investors like Twitter's junk bond deal so much it increased to $700 million. Now, if you listen to Carl Icahn, he knows obviously a great deal. Tremendous, $14 billion or so. And he stated, stay away from junk bonds. But here, social media sites Twitter Inc. collected a lot of likes on its debut of $700 million junk bond deal over the past 3 days. This is in December of 2019, too. So, so why do you think it's at junk bond status, ladies and gentlemen? Now, let's just look. I'm not giving investment advice. I could be wrong. Twitter could be a fantastic company. Oh, my God. The next Facebook. Oh, my God. Facebook doesn't need to issue junk bonds, by the way. And I'm not a fan of Facebook at all. I've told you for 2 years to delete your Facebook account and delete your Twitter account. I do not have Twitter. I have some imbecile on Twitter breaking the law, impersonating me. Amazon knows the profile, who this person is, because the person illegally shared my books on Amazon. So he broke the law, and he's breaking the law, impersonating me. But again, that's Twitter. People break the law all the time on that platform. And a lot of times they don't do anything. But investors so it's at a junk bond status, and they've been, their user growth has, by some estimates, stalled. Their revenue hasn't been what was expected. They have $3.4 billion in debt. Their debt increased by like $1.5 billion in the past year. And I'll just read you this. Twitter bets on crowdsourcing to help combat misinformation. Because God forbid somebody talks about Caligula, Biden's son, and the actual federal investigation into his business dealings. The federal government, the United States of America, is investigating right now Biden's son. God forbid it's discussed on Twitter. Oh my God almighty. Oh my God, we need, what do they call it? Bird watching? Introducing Birdwatch, a community-based approach to misinformation. Thanks, Twitter. Well, goodness gracious. We wouldn't want information detrimental to the Democratic Party. That would be horrendous. I mean, nobody would want, pretty soon people are going to believe that Trump wasn't in a Moscow hotel room getting, certain type of showers. That's what the Steele dossier said. Where was the Birdwatch then? Where was the Birdwatch when they were saying that George Papadopoulos or Carter Page or Michael Flynn or people around Trump himself, where was the Birdwatch when they were saying that Trump worked with Russia, which was a fabricated hoax? There's zero evidence that there should never have been any suspicion. It was a dossier purchased by Clinton, and an assessment, an absurd evaluation from the ODNI that was based on high to moderate confidence. They indicted 18 Russian intelligence officials based on a third-party tech firm that was outsourced by the Democratic Party, Company One, in the indictment. So tell me again, the misinformation. Where were the disclaimers when Madam Secretary said she only used private service for 4 years for convenience? I mean, how stupid do you have to be? But you don't want misinformation. When they said that Caligula, Biden's son, his laptop was hacked or the emails were a Russian plot, John Ratcliffe refuted all of that and said, yeah, that's not true. The intelligence community does not back this. still Twitter didn't want to unsuspend the New York Post's account. My God almighty, this is hilarious. This is the Titanic of tech firms. Look, the people who started it are billionaires or millionaires, whatever. They don't care. But there are people who derive self-worth from how many tweets and likes they get. Okay? That is sad. Like, I have my YouTube channels. I have this channel. I have another channel. The other channel that I haven't really worked on, but it's like 16,000 subs almost. This channel is what? I mean, we were at 180,000. We'll get there. We'll get to 200,000 eventually. I have my writing in the Hill, the Huffington Post, Salon, the Jerusalem Post. When I start writing again, I have my books on Amazon. So my voice is not tied to this cyber reality. Your voice shouldn't be tied to some kind of alternate reality either. But there are people who derive self-worth from getting retweeted, from likes, from how many followers they have. This is going to be the MySpace of political discourse. Twitter is not the digital commons. It's an extension now of the Democratic Party. And banning President Trump was the nail in the coffin for that company. They should never have done that if they wanted a long-term. Now they're going into, check my segment prior to this one. They're going into a subscription-based business model because people don't want, they're not deriving enough revenue and income to overcome the debt. And I mean, the FTC might fine them and all these things. Look, if Satan designed a platform that could unleash pure negativity and vitriol and venom and just base emotions onto the planet, it would be this platform. Twitter bets on crowdsourcing to help combat misinformation. You don't want misinformation. My God. Facebook ads, we know, swung the 2016, right? From the Putins. It was the Putins, right, Twitter? No birdwatch there. Twitter on Monday launched Birdwatch. This company is... the Titanic is going to have a better track record than this company. Twitter on Monday launched Birdwatch, an experiment that relies on the social network's users, Democrats and liberals, to provide context to tweets and to combat misinformation. We don't want misinformation. The tool, which Twitter describes as a community-driven pilot project, allows participating users... This ought to help its junk bond status. Allows participating users in the United States to create notes for a given tweet. As if... This is the best thing ever. Thank God. I don't have Twitter. I haven't had it for 2 years. I don't have Facebook. I haven't been... This is YouTube is not really social media, quote unquote. It's a video-based platform. So the difference between a VHS in the 80s and YouTube is the VHS player. It's still video. Okay, you could choose whether to watch me or not. Okay? A message board, by the way, I've been opposed to the absurd, dangerous hoax, Q nonsense. Don't go on message boards, whether it's Twitter. I would even say don't go on Reddit. I would say definitely don't listen to any nonsense from LMNOP or whatever, any letter, okay? Because you don't know who's on the other side saying, little patriots. But anyway, it's very destructive. And I watched the debate that I had with Jordan Sather. I called it out as extremely dangerous 2 years ago. I was 2 years ahead of everything. I told you also 2 years ago, delete your Twitter account. But here, the tool, which Twitter described as a community-driven pilot project, allows participating users in the United States to create notes for a given tweet. That'll increase the very positive emotions on that platform. That will exist for now on a separate part of Twitter's website. Notes that contribute to a consensus. Oh, a consensus. It's always about the liberal consensus on whether a report is misleading may eventually be shown directly on tweets, the company said in a post. This is hilarious. Democrats are petrified of any opposing viewpoint because their tinfoil hat fantasies are backed up by government and media without any direct evidence, just because they feel suspicious. Like Trump never worked with Russia to win in 2016. That never happened. That was misinformation, disinformation. That should have come with disclaimers. Caution, caution. Trump never got, bodily showers rained upon him. That's disinformation from Clinton. She purchased the Steele dossier. Caution, warning. You would never in a million years get that. Oh, and by the way, they're going after the left too. So it's like, I'm coming from the vantage point of an old Bernie Sanders supporter. I used to be the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, according to the Huffington Post, and the unofficial scribe of Sanders' most hardcore voters, according to the Washington Post, and I support President Trump, first president to step foot in North Korea. Abraham Accords, peace between Israel, UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, economic deals between Serbia and Kosovo, allocated more funding to historically black colleges and universities than any president ever. In terms of achievements, which is what a president should be judged on, he's one of the great presidents we've had. That's a fact. But anyway, it wouldn't be a fact on Twitter because the community policing, the bird watch. Oh my God, could you imagine the consensus on that? Could you imagine the consensus on that? Twitter did not say, however, whether tweets would receive notes may lead to removal or consequences. Well, of course they will. I can tell you that right now, almost certainly. The intent behind the tool, it is said, is for users to be able to respond quickly to fast-spreading claims. Or you couldn't have fast-spreading claims. Like, for example, the fast-spreading claim that the Russians weren't behind Caligula's laptop email exposure. I mean, isn't that the truth? Didn't Putin also? Putin went after Tulsi Gabbard. He went after Bernie Sanders. He went after Trump, and he was behind the Caligula Biden's son laptop. No. Oh, that's right. Of course, that was all made up by Democrats, and so you don't want any contrary opinions because, God forbid, this is such a racket. It's so hilarious. But anyway, it also places more power or burden potentially in the hands of users. So, okay, Twitter users have played a role in notifying potentially problematic tweets. How many times have you heard on Twitter? Because I don't have Twitter, but you can see, Trump is at fault for all the lives lost. Where is the disclaimer there? Trump is not at fault for the lives lost in Democratic-run states. There's somebody called a governor and a mayor and senators and Congress people who, in Democratic-run states like New York and New Jersey, and God bless the people of New York and New Jersey, only the best, most amazing people in New York and New Jersey. It's not Trump's fault. So how many times it's the fault of people like Cuomo and de Blasio and others? Or let's just put it this way. If it's Trump's fault, what responsibility or culpability do they have? But are you ever going to get a disclaimer saying, caution, Trump did not inject people with the pandemic? You'll never get any of that. It's going to be completely, this is going to be, they're racing towards the iceberg. This is the Titanic, the Titanic of tech companies. And let me ask you a question. Do you have anything? I'm not talking to my viewers. I'm talking to people who have lasted this long. Let's say you don't agree with me, or for the people who think that, H.A. Goodman, whatever. If he says it, Twitter will probably be amazing, and what kind of positive emotions do you derive from Twitter? Does it fulfill your life in any way? Does it make you a better person? Does it put money in your pocket? Are you happier when you get on Twitter, or is it just like an addiction? Is it just something that you're anticipating what people say, not necessarily enjoying what they say, but you're anticipating the messages that you get, or maybe the direct messages? The thing is, I remember having Twitter 2 years ago. I do not have Twitter. But there is a certain type of a false, certain people feel, whether it's because they're a journalist or a YouTuber or somebody in media, they say, okay, well, I have to be on this platform. You really don't. Thank God things have been better than ever the past 2 years for me when I left Twitter. You don't need Twitter. Like when I've heard people say, well, journalists have to be on Twitter and YouTubers and people in media. And no, you don't. You don't have to be on Twitter at all. People still talk about me on Twitter. I still have an imbecile like pretending that he's me, which is breaking the law. You can look at the legal and it's breaking the law in other countries too. So, and Twitter knows, like I said, Amazon knows who this person is. But I mean, the thing is, like, there's no reason to be within a cyber reality. It's issued junk bonds because it has a great deal of debt and there's a great deal of problems financially, or I should say enough issues financially for it to be a junk bond status. Its user base, like nobody really knows. They say, well, it's daily monetized users. These are metrics that nobody can really back up. You don't, like, they can say, well, we grew by X amount this quarter. You don't know. How do you know? How are you supposed to? That's with Facebook also, not just Twitter, but how are you supposed to know? At least, like, Facebook, though, is it much different. Facebook will be around for a long, long time. That platform itself is kind of just old, and I mean, they own Instagram and other companies, so that's a different story altogether. They don't even have bonds. They don't need bonds to raise money. But Twitter has debt. It's rated as a junk bond status. It alienated 74 million supporters of President Trump, banned President Trump. Now they have Birdwatch, this crowdsourcing nonsense. And to combat misinformation, it's not a digital commons. It's a place for apoplectic, disgruntled, angry, unhappy people, oftentimes liberal Democrats. And it's a place where people get bullied all the time. Your life could be, you say something wrong, or there's an old tweet of yours that was, nasty or demeaning, and you're done. You're done. There's a zero benefit derived from being on Twitter. And only negative, in my estimation. But anyway, give me your thoughts below. President Trump has single-handedly tanked this company. And you're not going to see it within the year, the next 2 years, or whatever. It'll still be around in 2 or 3 years. But I think 4 or 5 years from now, 6 years from now, all of those tweets that people they obsess over and they feel so good when they're retweeted, and you have politicians who have become media creations, okay? You know who they are. Without Twitter, the true one way to evaluate a voice, most people don't know who I am, but at least I don't need Twitter. One way to evaluate a voice is if Twitter, heaven forbid, didn't exist tomorrow, would you still remember what that person said? Would you still care about what that person thinks? Would you remember any of his or her tweets? Would you read that person's books or articles or watch that person's YouTube channel? So it's like there are people who have derived their self-worth, who they are, their influence, just by simply being on that platform. And it's a platform, it's a company that has a junk bond rating with a tremendous $3.4 billion in debt, with a user base where you don't know if it's really growing or not. By many estimates, it's not growing at all, or at least enough. And they just banned the 45th president of the United States of America. And they allowed President Trump, and President Trump made mistakes. Look, he should never have insulted LeBron James. He should never have insulted NFL athletes. This is true. He could have stated, look, I disagree here and there. And that's, he misused Twitter in the last couple of years of his presidency. He got to the presidency by using Twitter. But it's a platform that should be for everyone. It is now shrinking its user base, not expanding its user base. So how on earth is this company going to be around or even influential in 5 to 6 years? Can somebody tell me how Twitter will be influential? I don't see it. I don't see how this company. It's just if you just want to fight and argue and disagree and dispute and have a negative interaction with somebody that you will never meet, somebody that you don't know, Just go on Twitter, because it happens every single second of every single day on some topic. It's the worst platform of all time. At least you could say Facebook, you can meet up with people or find, people who are dear to you and, close to you at one point and see where they are. You can't do that with Twitter. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right this second, ladies and gentlemen. Get this segment viral. It's extremely important.